I can just for a few minutes. I just wanted to point to the slight difference between opportunities and barriers. So if you remember yesterday, I had mentioned that a barrier is something that we want 0% from, right? So ideally, no one should have to experience a barrier. So today we're going to look at any type of violence against women, in which case our furthest behind group has a higher prevalence and our furthest ahead group has a lower prevalence. For any type of violence against women, we look at wealth, residence, age group, sorry, not mother's education, number of children under 5. So mother's education is something we look at when we look at stunting, wasting, which you'll see in the next barrier indicator. So here, it's the women's education, actually not mother's education. So in this tree that we see for Philippines DHS 2017, we see that our furthest ahead group is women who are top 60 wealth bracket, older than 35, and have tertiary education. And only, I should say only, since I think it should be 0, but 8% of those women experience any type of violence against women. Our furthest behind group are women who are in the bottom 40 wealth bracket and are ages 15 to 34. And these women experience a 21% prevalence rate to when we look at the code, we will go into the specific variables that are used to calculate any type of violence. On our platform, you'll see that we have any type of violence against women, sexual violence against women, sexual and physical violence against women, and psychological violence against women. So we've also split up this category into separate indicators in case your focus is on any one of those. So the way barriers are different is one in the access rate, so the prevalence rate is different. It's not calculated differently, so for our code it follows the same calculation as our opportunities, but our D-index calculation changes. And this is mainly because D-index is typically used to measure the distribution of a positive outcome. So therefore, when we look at barrier indicators like stunting or violence against women, what we actually use to calculate the index is the absence of stunting or the absence of violence against women. So this allows us to keep that same interpretation where 0 is no inequality and 1 the inequality in our LNOB methodology, as we mentioned yesterday, 0.01 to 0.3 is where we usually see the range. And it also allows us to compare across indicators, so across barriers and opportunities on our platform. So, basically the access rate that we would use, let's say here for stunting is 28% prevalence, our D-index would do the absence of stunting, which is 72% to calculate. And the one thing that also changes, and this is more for the platform, not as much for the R code, but in case you are going to use the platform as a result there, the scatter plot changes. So when we start plotting our access rate against the prevalence rate against the D-index, our focus is that we would like lower prevalence and lowering inequality. And the cases where we are concerned is where prevalence rate is higher and inequality is higher. So when you look at our scatter plot, you'll notice that the quadrants have changed. Well, actually, this is not the correct scatter plot. So let me take you to the platform so you can see it. So it would be regional that the scatter plot changed. This is all of our indicators, which we formalized so it would follow the same composition. Let me take you to the platform quickly. Okay, so here if we choose our any type of violence against women for the Philippines, 2017, much quicker today because we're not all downloading on the same website. Um, you can go straight down to regional analysis, and here you'll have the prevalence rate, the D index, and this is our scatter plot. So now instead of the dark orange being in the top left quadrant, it's in the top right quadrant. And our dark blue is in the bottom left quadrant instead of the bottom right quadrant. So this is when we're looking at just a barrier. So when you're looking at a barrier across the different subnational divisions, our scatter plot changes. And just to note a little bit more on what we've done in the platform, if there's a certain, like in our regional analysis, if there's a certain area of countries or selected countries in Asia Pacific that you'd like to look at, you can actually select which countries and the graphs will automatically change. Similarly, when we haven't made it to this section, but our other indicators section, which is the scatter plot that we just saw, which has all the indicators mapped on the scatter plot using their access rate and D index, you can choose which indicators you want to look at. So if we only want to look at violence against women, we can filter out all the other indicators and get a graph that just looks at violence against women. You can also download any of these. We have an overtime graph. I guess for Philippines 2013 didn't have the violence against women indicators, but for other indicators you'll have overtime as well. The index and the scatter plot. And on the platform, when you hover over, you'll see which of the indicators is actually being considered and their preference rate. Okay, so let's get back to our code. So we've done clean fuel secondary education. Now we will take a look at any type of violence against women. So if you can open up the national RMC file, close your secondary files and clean up your environment. Again, we can run the packages if you'd like, otherwise it should be already there. Everybody's open on national. So any type of violence against women gets a little bit more complicated because we aren't just considering one variable to say this woman has experienced violence. We're actually considering a group of variables that contribute to yes violence globally. And the circumstances are also more there's more circumstances. So we have 4 households, residents, age group, number of children under 5 in the household, and education. You'll see all the variables that are listed there. And we also have these 4 any violence against women variables that we consider: D104, D106, D107, D108. But in these variables, you have many different questions in the overarching variable. So for instance, D105 has A, B, C, D, E, F, H, I, J, and these are the variables that we consider. If you'd like to open up the file, the FRQ file or the one that you guys downloaded today, the TXT files, you could take a look at these variables and see what the questions are for these variables. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to stop for that.
Maybe just a quick overview that this is SDG 5.2.1, any type of violence against women in the past 12 months. So you usually have it for those different things are all different types of physical violence. They could be slapping people. They're all, it's very detailed, right? It's psychological violence, it's like threatening uh, or categories there. But it's just that you, like, just apply, you don't need to go into the detail. They're all separate.
So, okay, so go ahead and run this. We're just establishing our circumstances indicator and our variable. The violence against women variables all come from the IR data set. It's the individual recode, which is basically the women's recode for data. So this, you'll find a lot of other indicators in here as well. On our platform, we have still birth attendance, family planning. So, you know, I'm sure there's other indicators that can be created at this recode as well. So go ahead and run that. And now let's import our data. So import the data frame. And we have our data frame that's being constructed with 31 variables. Is everyone there? Okay, so let's pre-process our sample weight. Sample weights for the type. So for sample weights for our does anyone remember the sample weight? Yes, HB005. So for the women's recode, the variable name for sample weight is a little different. H005. It's already in there. You don't have to change anything, but just to note that even so in this recode, we do need a different variable for sample weight. So always double check. Go into the FRQ file, look for sample weight, and you will find the variable code there. And make sure that the variable code you're inputting is relative. And this is because it's actually a violence against women. It's a violence sample weight. So let's process the sample weight. So we should now have 32 variables. We've created our sample weight column divided by 1,000,000. This is a new circumstance, right? So we're adding the variable where we're counting how many children are in the household under 5. Okay, so first what we consider is age, and for this so in this indicator we actually need to use the PR. So we're going back to the household recode file. So here what we're going to do is we're going to go to the household recode file, and we're going to pull age of all the people in each household, and only use the inputs that are less than or equal to 5. Right? So first we establish our age. First we establish that we're looking at PR. Then we will assign that our data path, which is how we're going to input the data. Next, we're saying we need the age variable, which is HB105, and we want to. So this line is going to actually import the data, right? Using the PR recode. We're not just going to import the age variable, we're also going to import HB001 and HB002, which if you look at our variable file is our cluster ID and our household number. So this is how we merge the data sets. When each household has a unique household number ID and cluster ID. So when we take our IR, which also has these variables, we will merge it together with using these two codes here. So we're going to import our age and these two variables. Next, we are just converting the age column column to numeric, so there's no issues. And filtering, so we're DFU5 is a data frame. So we're creating a data frame under 5, that's just the short form of it, where we're only going to put all the data or filter all the data for all the inputs that are less than 5. So we will only have individuals who are under 5 in each household cluster. Then this new column that we're creating is a count column, and we are assigning the value of all of these as 1, because what we basically need to do is count the number of children in each household. So assigning it as 1 is just going to give us a way to aggregate these inputs. So next, our under 5 data frame is going to actually aggregate those inputs. So we're going to aggregate the count column by HV001 and HV002. Okay, so I know this is a lot, so if you let's run it just till here. So select 4, 5, 9, 10, 13, all the way up until 24. And let's run this. So you can see we have our 2 data frames. One is DF under 5 and one is under 5. So let's go ahead and open up DF under 5. You're going to see our household ID, our cluster ID, age, and the count column. Now under 5, once we use the aggregate function, these weird titles come up. And basically it's grouping based on group 1 and group 2. So our inputs for group 1 was HV001 and our input for group 2 was HV002. And this is the count. So we have the household ID, cluster ID, and this is the count of how many children are in each of the households. And just to be able to understand this a bit better, we can change the names. So we're going to do 2 things now. We're going to take our under 5, it's actually a vector that we created. We're going to take our under 5, oh no, it's a data, and it's an under 5 data frame, and we're going to merge it with our original DF. So our aggregate count of number of children per household is now going to merge into our original data frame. And this function does that. So we first convert the values as numeric, and then we pull these 3 columns and merge them by the household ID and the cluster ID. So go ahead and run this line. This is a yeah, so something should have changed. Oh, I forgot to do this line. So we have to do both lines. So just select this entire and now you'll see that our data frame now has 33 variables. So if we open that up, you're going to see our end under 5. In that if statement, we also changed the name of the columns. So we changed the 3rd column to read n under 5, and we renamed group X and group Y, group 1 and group 2 to be the variable. It should actually be H the end of Y, because there's probably deleted by accident. But anyways, we don't really use that data frame, so it's okay. But in case you want to be accurate, we could just rerun that. Rerun it. Why is this happening? Oh, wait, no, sorry. It does have to be because in our DF, the household ID and the cluster ID is B001. So we do have to keep it as. Okay, so now what we're going to do is any entries that are empty, which basically means there's no children under 5, we're going to assign them a value of 0 because these households should still be considered in the indicator. We don't want to get rid of them. We want to make sure they're considered as having 0 children under 5. So just run this line as well. So okay, so it looks like there's no 0 value. So we do a table. If we want to see what's happening in the column, we can do a table of data frame and under 5. Why do we have? Okay, I'm going to clean up because I reran this a few too many times. So let's see, because there's 2 inputs to our n under 5. So it looks like when I ran it again, it created another column with the same data. So I'm rerunning it till this point, and then we will run just this block. And now our data frame should only have 1 n under 5. Okay, and we can see right away in the first set that there's a value that's 0, so that didn't have any aggregate value. So there aren't any children under 5. So we're all set to go with a number of children under 5 in the household. Now we are going to consider we're going to create our any type of violence against women function and our data use data frame. For this indicator, I've done things a little bit different. Normally we have our function, then we define the variable, and then we run the function. Here I want to define our variable names first. Now, this is also just to show you it's just the way you prefer to think. I prefer to define my variables first, then run my function, then define my function, then run my function. So it's completely up to you. And if you restructure any of the code before, it will still work. So give yourself that freedom to play with it. So first is our collection of variable names. We're reassigning this because this is now only our violence against women variables. So if you look at our violence against, if you look at our var names from earlier, it's going to be, it's our required var names. This has all of our variables. This is only the violence against women variables. And what we're going, so you can go ahead and create this. So var name, and it creates a whole string. And you can, so if we wanted to do sexual violence against women, we would just take out all the other variables and run the same chunk of code just using sexual violence against women codes. This has all of them in it. If you want to do physical violence against women, you would leave all the other codes and only leave physical violence against women in there. The second line is to find the column, like we always do. And this is the length of the vector. So our var name is a vector. We're going to run a loop on this vector. And so we need the length of that vector. So now our function. Okay, so the way violence against women is constructed is that we consider 2 variables. we consider B044 and B502. This is because the so there's cases where the interview is interrupted and the data is incomplete. So we don't want to use those inputs because because we're not, yeah, so we're basically excluding that from our data set. And again, this is the choice that we've made to run the analysis. If we would like to consider the codes or maybe consider them if they have yes violence in it. But what we've done is we first look at B044 and you can again go to the FRQ file, search for B044, but we only consider cases where women were selected and interviewed, and we omit when a woman was not selected, obviously, because the questions weren't asked, or women were selected but privacy was interrupted. So, so 0 and 2, because then if the privacy was interrupted, there's a chance that the results aren't accurate. So here in our function, we first omit these two answer choices for B044. And next, we take a look at D005. Sorry, not D005, B502, where we actually, I think in our indicator, are we doing ever married? Do we do a partner? It is. Okay. So we consider partner.
Input partner one, so only partner one. And I think it should be
Yeah. So the options are one, never in union, currently in union, living with the partner, or formerly in union, living. And it says here we consider, I mean, in the function as well, we're considering 1, 2, which I think we should only be considering 1.
or no idea on the mind.
Yeah.
If it's matching with the data on the platform,
Yeah.
it should be.
Okay. So we're considering never in union and currently in union, living with partner. Let's test it out together. We'll see if it matches. And if not, we take out 1. So if you wanted ever married, or if you want to consider everyone regardless of their status, then you can include all. Our sample weight again is different for violence against women, so it's D005. And yeah, this is filtering the data set. So the first function is filtering the data set to only include inputs for that we consider okay for this data set. Now, all violence is a function which is basically going to do a loop, and it's going to go through all of those variables that we listed as kind and var name. And if any of them have the answer choice 1 or 2, which is basically the respondent's response is yes, often or sometimes, then we consider it as yes, this respondent has experienced violence. If the other two choices are 0, never, and 3, yes, but not in the last 12 months, we don't consider it. So if you want to create an indicator where you are looking at violence experience ever, like in lifetime, then you would also consider 3. But for our cases, for the SDE definition, we are only considering the last 12 months. So we've excluded 3 of ours. So only respondents' answers that are 1 and 2 should be defined as 1. The other 2 aren't. And this will output our so this will return our data frame, which is then ready to go into cart. So if you go ahead and run this entire, so this statement, we're just running the all violence function on data use. And then this, we are rewriting data use to exclude any, to only include not null values. So we're basically excluding any null values in sample weight. So go ahead and run this frame. You can run the whole block, so we don't miss any lines. So now we have our data use, and the violence functions have been applied to the data use. So you will also see our bar 2 tab, which has been created. Right now, adding wealth, residence, education, we've done many times. You guys must be experts by now, so go ahead and run this entire block. And from 34, we now have 37 variables in our database. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is add age group, which is different. So we haven't incorporated age group yet. And the way we incorporate age group is, again, we have our variable name, we find the column number, and we create our function. So by default, we put everything as missing. Age group is missing. If the age is, it's not MA, and it's less than 15, then we give the range of 0 to 14, and etc. So these are the divisions we created. So you can adjust these divisions according to what makes sense for your analysis. So for instance, for our pandemic preparedness, we actually changed the age groups to be a bit broader. You can make it more narrow, you can make it broader. Just keep in mind when you create smaller groups, you might need to change your variance later on in our part. So go ahead and run this. Age group is quite simple. It runs just like any of the other indicators. It's just that, like language, we create labels for the different age range. Okay, and now we're going to create our national average access rate, or prevalence rate, I should say. So can you guys go ahead and calculate that for me? You can enter it in here. And if anyone knows it, can just quickly shout it out. Anyone? This is a quick one. We did it so many times. 14%. So what do I have to type in here? You. So everyone got 14.6%. Thumbs up? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's calculate our top 60 wealth prevalence rate in the next block. 11.5%. And we'll do an urban and rural split. So urban areas, top 60 wealth, 11.46. Didn't make that much of a difference. and rural. So can we input our weighted mean function for calculating rural top 60? And once you have the result, you can just count out. What's it? To put it in to check. I can just copy paste as well. Change it to rural. Okay, bottom 40 prevalence rate. So we're seeing that it's not changing. The access of the prevalence rate isn't changing much, even as we look at urban and rural divisions. So it'll be interesting to see what our tree comes up with as well. The bottom 40 wealth prevalence rate. So now in this one, I've assigned it a variable, but I haven't printed what the value is. So you can look at it here, or you can type in print, whichever. But we see that the prevalence rate is actually 19%. So that's a shift in prevalence rate when we look at the bottom 40. Well, so let's look at lower education bottom 40. And we see that the prevalence rate actually decreased. And secondary education increases. Just for fun, let's check higher. Reduces a little bit. So again, we don't need to calculate every computation, but let's let CART do that for us. So here is our CART construction. These are all the inputs. Can you go ahead and change the inputs for the R part function and put in the values that you think we need for any type of balance against limit. So this is line 9, 10, and 12 that need to be filled in. And for now, we can focus on how we would actually construct this tree in the standard LNOB analysis. If anyone has the inputs, you can shout them out. If you chosen. Third one. May be chosen. 0.0. And what's 49? Okay, great. So let's run this. Plot the tree. And let's take a look at our platform. The change. Okay, so if you have the platform open or your R code open, let's compare the two. So we have our national prevalence rate is 15%. Yeah. Our top first split is amongst 12, which is true. 12%, 19%. And then in our furthest ahead group, we have a further split by age group and tertiary education, which has an access rate of 8%. So we see that in our R file too. The access rates in your R file are in the bubble prevalence rate. And furthest behind is just composed of our poor households, no education variables, just poor households and age. And we can confirm this is not also because of a small population size. We have 21.6%, and the size of the group is sufficient to create another split of that variance wasn't found amongst that variable. Okay, so let's get back to the R studio. Here now for sensitivity analysis, here we're doing a deduct tree again. But let's skip that, right? Let's go straight to change complexity parameter. And I want you guys to input in what values you'd like to see for this tree. So it can be keeping this one and changing this to 0.5 or 0.7. It can be making this CP 200 and keeping this 0.09. It can be changing 49 to 20. Just experiment. We use 49 because this is, I think, the DHS recommended threshold. So that's why we chose the number 49. So go ahead and change anything. This is really just for you to experiment with. Did anyone get an interesting tree or want to share what they changed? Why they changed it? I'm gonna change. I changed the 0.07 to see if that would help us get if education would show after we did that something. This and our furthest behind still doesn't show education. So if that split still isn't happening, we can keep trying different things. And this whole block of code will show even still our furthest behind isn't showing variance in education or any of the other variables, any of the others. Okay, so let's go straight to D index. So now this is where, in order to honor what I showed you in the beginning with the presentation, we will use 1 minus bar 2 tab. And this basically what it's going to do is turn all of our yes violence against women to no, and all of our no violence against women to yes. So we're just flipping the prevalence rate to become the opposite. So this is the one line that we have to add in for barriers when we are calculating the index, and this will normalize it to the opportunity indicators. You can go ahead and run this. And the index should be 0.04. Okay, great. That's fine. Okay. Almost time. Who wants a brain break? Who wants to go straight into regional? Neither? No preference? Brain break or no brain break? Okay, let's, okay. All right, well, let's do it so we can move, but a really quick one, so everyone has to be very quick with this one. I love the brain group. Okay, figure out their reasons. Okay. All right. Stand up. So, same format as yesterday. This or that. You need to stretch, breathe. Okay, so these are a little bit more thinking questions. Would you rather eat the same food for the whole year or wear the same clothes for the whole year? So who's going to that side? I want to see. Okay, all right. I guess it would take away from the stress of deciding what to eat every day. All right, who sets one alarm and who has to set as many as possible? For today morning, who set more than one, or who snoozes? This applies to snoozing. Just one. Snoozing. I don't know. Then you have to be in the middle. Okay, so the people who have to do one, you just have to do one movement, one disco, just one. One, two, three. One. Yeah. The people who have to set many, because you're partying too much. One, two, three, four. Okay, and if you need more, then do more. Okay. Would you rather be always stuck in traffic or have a really slow internet connection? I guess this is not optional. Are you in between? You don't want to decide. Okay, I think I got it. Bangkok's pretty much. Okay, all right. A lot of middle. Middle. Yeah. You don't want to- Okay. What would you prioritize? Oh, this got serious. Let's do one wave for this. Ready? From this side to that side. Oh, no, disco wave. So we start like this and one by one. 5, 6, 7, 8. Woo! Love it. Okay. All right. So what would you prioritize? Low inequality, high access rate. So this is a low D index and high access. We're assuming it's the opportunity. Or high inequality and low access rate. So high and high let's put high and high on that. High inequality, high access rate, low inequality, low access rate. on my end. So are we all in between? So high inequality, high access rate on that side. So that's what should be considered. And this side would be low inequality and low access rate. There's no right answer. Okay, so it's still a little bit undecided. There's no right answer. I think on our platform, what do? We do light orange as, you guys remember what we do light orange as? Yeah, so lower, we would in our color coding, we would prioritize low access and low inequality versus high access and high inequality. Yeah, so the light orange is what we would say. But this could be, there's no right or wrong. Right? Okay, so let's finish up the violence against women. Sorry, I know I love these brain breaks too. I wish we could do the next one standing. Okay, so we've done national, so you can go ahead and close our national file, as well as all the supplementary files, clean up the environment. And let's open up regional. Okay, we're going to go quickly through this because this is the same exact approach. We're just adding regions. So there's nothing new in composing the indicator or the circumstance. And you've already seen how regions are incorporated, so this should be quite quick. Oh, great. We had a virtual participant also saying as many as possible. I'm assuming that's for the alarms. All right. So run the packages or skip it. And let's define our data. So, we have a quiz question. What are the two circumstances missing from our string of circumstances? Can anyone say them? If you could just say them out loud, it'd be fine. So here we have poor household wealth, residence, age group. What were the other two circumstances that we considered? Children under 5, so we label it as N under 5. And what's the other one? Education. Okay, so go ahead and run this. Define our data, and that we're going to refer to IR, and import our data. So go ahead and run all three of those blocks. Now we have our data frame, 34 variables. Let's add the sample weight column, 35 variables. Add our N under 5 using the PR data set. So we're creating a different data frame. And now our any type of violence against women function. So this is where we filter out the data that we find not to be accurate. And go ahead and run that. Okay, and now adding wealth, residence, education, and age group. So we plugged the age group in because now we've already seen how we consider age group. I'm going to skip conducting descriptive analysis, except for selecting region. So, because this is where we are creating our subnational divisions. So let's go ahead and see the region list. And how do we rewrite our data frame to only consider the selected region? Anyone knows that you can just shout it out. How can we rewrite our data frame to create a regional data frame? Okay, great. So data use. So we take data use and we are going to only select selected regions. So data use region. Region equals selected. Okay, and comma, and we keep the other side blank because we want all of the columns. So we're just filtering for regions. So go ahead and run that. What did I do? Oh, I didn't select the region. Okay, there we go. So first select the region, make sure you run both lines, and then filter for that region. Okay, we're skipping descriptive statistics. It's the same way that we calculated it for region before. So you can either use the regional data use, or you can use the original data use and filter. So let's just get straight to parts, so we can also have a little bit of time to go into the to begin going into the sensing the children's barrier variables. So now running part, we will create, this is again our available regions. It's the same parameters except we're adding selected region now. And this is just for title string, so this is, you'll know on your plot that this is the region that we're looking at. Formula string doesn't need this because our data use that we're using is only the data for that region. So we don't need to add this to formula string. We have our CP chosen as 1, min B chosen as 0.09, and 49 as our max. Sorry, min. Go ahead and run this. And you should have similar looking tree. So in this region, we see that the prevalence of violence against women is 4%. The furthest behind is 11%. And it comprises of people who have 1 to 2 children. It's pretty specific. Sorry, exactly 1 child. So it's greater than or equal to 1 and less than 2. So exactly 1 child, and are in the age group of 15 or 25. So we can also see this tree on our platform, which is more visually clear. here, the sensitivity analysis, again, is your choice to change and adapt. It's in there so that you can use it. You can start using this code on your own, but we don't have to do that right now. Let's go into D-index. So can anyone fill in how are we going to adapt this barrier to be able to successfully calculate the D-index for the opposite of the barrier? Let's see, what's the input here? Perfect. 1 minus opposite data use bar 2 tab. All right, so let's go ahead and run this whole block. Right, go back up so you can see it. And everyone should get a D-index of, and remember this is just for, this is a regional D-index. So the D-index for this region is 0.02. Same answer? Okay, great. So I think this is it for violence against women. Before we wrap up, are there any questions? This is the last for the DHS indicators. Are there any indicators that you guys in this repetition and process that you're thinking of trying this methodology out on? Or indicators that you'd like to try it out on? Any thoughts? It's a good time to, I mean, if there are any questions, I mean, any seeds that you might want to plant or try this methodology on, it's a good time that we can also discuss. We've tried quite a few indicators through the process of creating this platform, so sometimes there are things that work, don't work, and we're happy to discuss that with you all. So maybe over lunch, if you do think of any indicators that you would want to try out, just feel free to come up to us, discuss, or we'll have more time for discussion after lunch as well. Yeah, all right, well, thank you, Sasha. I'll pass it over to you. So we will now go into NMS and the children's indicators.
Okay, so I think um, switching gears and going to a different data set. This is National Nutrition Survey. In the morning, Arum shared the link. If you guys have access to that link, the data is there, and then the R file is called, and then the Philippines 2015 stunting R&D. Before getting there, maybe I can show you, so how did we get access to NNS? We went to the online platform for National Nutrition Survey through the Department of Science and Technology at NRI, and we requested the files. They were public use, so 2015, we received the zip files. They were in Excel format. There are 3 different data sets, one for anthropometric information, one was for social and demographic background, and one was only social, I think. So what we did is, maybe I can show you already For this one, we use Stata, and I can show the maybe the R file, or sorry, not R file, do file that we use for creating that NNS data file. So this is an alternative approach. You guys have gone through DHS and, you know, like opening DHS data, merging data sets, or at times it was just using one data set. So here what we did is just we import the CSV files, or this is the NNS Anthrop CSV, which is one of the 3 Excel files that come out. And then for this variable stunting, it's SDG 2.2.2, and there are 3 indicators of child health. One is stunting, one is overweight, and one is wasting, overweight, and stunting. So they're all related to height, weight, and age of children under 5. These 3 indicators are created following a very standardized procedure in line with WHO international rankings for okay. Let's first share, or maybe I share. Okay. So this is, I mean, the Stata setup is a little bit different than R files and R Studio. As opposed to an R notebook where we're using do files. I think many of you know about Stata, and we're writing our code here. And then we have our, I mean, this is a much ad hoc version. We can share this later if you like, but I think it's pretty straightforward to come up with the way that you feel comfortable on your own. Even on Excel, you can prepare your data. So here, just, I mean, we don't need to go through this in detail, but just to say that we dropped all entries in the NNS anthropometric CSV that was for kids about 60 months, so about 5-year-olds. We dropped the variables that we don't need. And then there's a function on Stata which you can install, publicly available, called zscore06. When you know the weight and height and age of the children, you are able to define the variables stunting, wasting, and overweight. So here, that's what I mean, this is just one piece of code as opposed to 50 lines on R, where you would create a function. The function is already created in Stata. I don't like R. I think it's quite clear. I like Stata and commands that are already done. So yeah, zscore06 has these a few arguments here. We consider the age in months of these children under 5, height of them, weight of them, their sex, and then female is coded 2, male is coded 1. That's coming from the raw data. And then we can look a little bit into the descriptive statistics, following a similar approach to what we had in our files, right? And then when we are looking at the national average, we always want to validate what we get, right? We need to have a benchmark to see if the variable that we created matches official reports. That's what we do here. And for stunting, for example, according to the Philippine Nutrition Facts and Figure 2015 publication, stunting is 33.4, and that's, I think, ballpark, we're around there, 32.9 or something like this. We're at 33%. So 1/3 of children in the Philippines as of 2015 were stunted. And similarly, wasting is well, when you run Z-score, all those 3 variables are automatically created, so you don't need to do anything except for running this line 14. But then once you have that variable for wasting, which is VHS, VHZ, you can then create your wasting variable. Again, if you're below -2 standard deviation of the WHO rankings, and then we validate the number. So, and there was, I think, there was a bit of a decrease from 2013 to 2015, which we saw in the report. We have only the 2015 data, and we also validated that the then overweight going in the same direction. So once we have this anthropometric data, we then merge the variables that we need for the cart analysis for the LNOB trees, and these variables were coming from different data sets. So there's one that we created for wealth, bringing from one. Then I think there was another one for the education, the highest level of education in the household. I think it was not quite clear if it was possible to match the child's mother's education. So that's, I think, what we use on the LNOB platform. But while merging, we couldn't find that particular child's mother's education. So we use the highest level of education in the household. It would be a little bit different variable than the analysis on our platform. But we don't have this data on the platform, right? For Philippines, if you go to LNOB platform, there is no stunting, wasting, and overweight, because we only use DHS and mix currently. This is just for training purposes, for your eyes only, and for the eyes of our virtual parts. And then, yeah, creating the variables that are needed. So basically, all that big part of step 1, step 2 that you've been going through, you can do it outside R, in Excel, in Stata, Python, whichever you like. Prepare your data, bring it to data use format, and then just load it to R. The reason why you need to load it to R is because other softwares are not doing cart. There's no R part in Stata. I'm not sure if there's in Python, but Stata doesn't have it yet. So for the last bit of cart analysis, you'll have to bring it to Stata. For D-index, you can use Stata. There's a code, there's a command for that. Okay, so let's go back to R. And we just get started with it a little bit, that we don't have to finish it on the after lunch. We can continue another variable. Maybe we can look at wasting and overweight after lunch, and then we move to LFS. So it's a bit tricky. So that's my screen also. This is currently, I think, LFS. So I'm going to clean this environment. And as you know, all your documents and the data is in this type of folder. We have this NMS and LFS. I hope you guys had a chance to, or if not now, later on, you can use the Dropbox link to update the data that's here. These are the two data sets that we have here. So here we're going to open Philippines. Or maybe if I go back to stunting R&D. So standard procedure where I think I also run these packages. I install them. There is no need to do it, but once you install and when you re-click, it's just a matter of seconds because it already has it. So it's open and it's going fast. Libraries are called for. So now we are defining our metadata, and here we have we're going to start with stunting. And here you can see I commented out wasting and overweight. And later on, once we're done with stunting, we can come back here and just uncomment them. So we're going to have stunting first. The path, we are defining our paths also. Our data is in the data folder DTA, and it's called Philippines NNS 2015 data. So I'm going ahead and running this. So we have these things that we just, these are flags that we created. and then we're loading our data, the stated data. So here, note that the function, not function, the command is a little bit different. It's called read DTA. There's another one that's called read SPSS, for example, if you have SAV files, right? For this DTA files that we use, or DAT files that we use for DHS, it was a completely different setup. So there are different ways of loading your data into R, and I think these are all like two different packages that go for it. So if you look at our data frame, we have about 16,368 observations. These are all children under 5. Yeah, and then we have these binary variables, stunted, wasted, and overweight, 0, 1 variables if a child is overweight, wasted, or stunted or not. We know their sex, 1 or 2. We know their age. This is in years. Then we know their age in months. Oops, sorry, I saw this one up. Then we know which household they're coming from. Are they coming from bottom 40 and top 60? And the number of children in that household and highest level of education, and then their region. We know this. On top of it, we know their province. Thanks to FNRI and Aldrich here, they also gave us the urban-rural variable, which is not available publicly, but they gave us separately. So we thought it was an important variable to include in the analysis. So this is, we didn't do anything to this data, we just loaded it. But you will remember that we create our variables a little bit differently so that they appear on the tree a little bit easier, in an easy interpretive way. So we're going to rename and add the sample weight following. I just make it a little bit bigger. Let's see how many observations we have. We have, I think 17 variables. Yeah, 17 variables, 6,368 observations. There's no more cleaning to be done. We're just going to create a few new variables. So here, we go ahead and add our sample weight variable, just renamed a new variable, not touching the original variable. So now we have 18 variables. Then we're going to construct our data use data frame. Data use includes var2 tab as our outcome, and then it includes the circumstances that we want to use in the cart analysis. So we are going ahead with, I think you guys are quite familiar with this. There's a bit of a chunk of code here that's commented out because these are for wasted and overweight, but we're starting with stunted. And then once we add our var2 tab, we move to the circumstances, so poor household, just renaming them, if you will. We are not creating a new variable through a function like we did in R5 because they're already in there. And then household education, and then sex, the highest level of education in household, and the sex, the male and female, and then residence, urban, rural, and number of children under 5. Yeah. And then we have at the bottom the weighted mean. We can check the sample weight. So in a way, this is sample step 2 and step 3 together. So we go ahead and run this. So here you can see that weighted mean for data use stunted, data use sample weight. So this is the weighted stunting prevalence in the Philippines 2015 for the entire sample national, 32.9. So it's just a little bit under what we had seen in the original report, 33.4. For us, that's not a major difference. So we go ahead that we think that this is a good setup. So it's 33% and 1/3 of children in the Philippines 2015 being stunted at national level. And then as Tejal's favorite function, there is the weighted mean here, and we have it, for urban households and for rural, urban households, and richer urban, and then richer. Maybe this could be a rural one. Maybe we could turn it to. Oh no, this is the we're looking at a subsample here, urban poor households. For them, the prevalence rate is under a quarter of children. So things are a little bit better in urban areas. I think when it comes to overweight, urban areas are less. So our data is basically ready. Our data use consists of, again, we didn't lose any information, any observations, because this was a clean file. There's no missing variable anymore in stunting, and at least in stunting. And we have 24 variables. The new ones that we created in step 2, there is just renaming, following var2 tab. We put the poor household 01, the education variable, sex, residence, and number of children under 5. That's the model we have. And as you recall, I was mentioning that this, in our standard analysis in our platform for stunting, this would be mother's education, but we couldn't match when we were preparing data. It might be possible, but we don't. I must admit, I didn't look too much into it also. So then we can go ahead and run cart. Maybe let's make it to be able to see the tree. We can make this bit a little bit bigger. We have a vector for our circumstances. We have all the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 circumstances that we have. This is standard analysis. In this data set, I think language, ethnicity, or religion, these type of indicators were not there. So this is more at the national level standard analysis. We have our formula string that will appear on top of our plot. So a formula string will go into our part function as an argument. Title string is going into the plot. So CP chosen is 1 as standard, where MB chosen is 9%. You guys know very well, but this 49, in the case of Philippines with 16,000 households, it's meaningless. We have much more observations. ANOVA and all the rest is the same. So we can go ahead and run this. And now our R part is done. If we uncomment line 23 and print the summary of the tree fit, which collects all information from our part, we would see all the details in a table format. But we don't want to do that. We want to look into the tree plot. So this tree plot is for your eyes first and foremost. Nobody else has seen this except our team. So this is how stunting in the Philippines could be disaggregated in an intelligent manner through our part and through cart analysis. So again, on top you have the national average, 1/3 of children being stunted 2015. And the first split happens by wealth of the household. So poorer households and non-poorer households. So this is a barrier. So our eyes are usually going to the bottom left to see the furthest behind, but for the barrier indicators, we go to the bottom right. So poorer households on the right, on average, stunting children who live in poorer households, for them, it's 44%, while it's 24% for richer households, top 60 households, let's say. Among the poorer households, the next split happens by the level of education in the household, and the lower educated ones are at a much more disadvantage. Half of children living in poorer households and where highest level of education in the household is lower, they are stunted. So half of those children are stunted, while poorer households with a bit higher education or secondary education, the rate is around 38% for them. The next split happens by the number of children in the household. So we see that stunting prevalence for the furthest behind, the red colored circle at the far bottom right, is 53%. So 53% of children living in poor households with lower education as highest level of education, and in households where there are more than 2 children, for them, they are the highest prevalence for stunting. And we can, when we look at the furthest ahead in this, we're going to the bottom left, and that's 17%. And who are they? They are richer households, up 60% of wealth distribution, and where highest level of education in the household is tertiary education or higher education. So for them, around 17% of children are stunted. So we can, this was at national level, we can do this at region level, or even at province level if you knew the province codes. I think they're province codes, but I'm not sure if we know the names of those provinces. So here, again, we have the codes for the regions. I think there are the same number of regions as in DHS. There's a question? Maybe just a sec, maybe the microphone so the virtual participants can hear also.
Not related to our, but the result. What could be the reason why, even if they are in richer household and higher education, these children experience this something?
Yeah.
What could be the explanatory or the reason?
Yeah. What could be? I mean, I think when it comes to stunting, the quality and quantity of nutrition is there. We are not observing any nutritional intake variables. We have a wealth variable, which is missing a lot of things. If this was a household income expenditure survey, we could see, for example, the household expenditure per capita, which would be a better welfare indicator, could capture more. What other indicators could there be? There could be, I mean, there can be more physiological issues like the sickness prevails that in the child's history from birth. There could be issues from pregnancy that the woman might have experienced during her pregnancy. I mean, you know, Sejal was talking about any type of violence against women. In DHS, we know there's a variable on teenage violence during pregnancy, right? So that's, for example, one of the reasons why it could be miscarriage, early birth, or so there. I think a lot of factors, but just to remind ourselves that like this is not causal, right? Like we're only doing a data disaggregation in a more efficient manner. So we're not really explaining what's deriving stunting, but we're trying to find a group in the Philippines that has the highest prevalence, so that we can call them as the furthest behind. And then we can zoom into that group and study that group a little bit more, or study that region, province a little bit more, so that we can come up with some sort of policies or understand the causal background to this problem a little bit more. Yeah. So this is NNS data. I don't think there was there would be much background information on more information on they could be included in there, but you can have a look, and we can have a look and see what other variables can come in there.
Just adding to Celsa's comment, so stunting typically results from chronic malnutrition, which is not captured by the survey data that we have here. And again, LNOB analysis does not tell you why. It just shows you the descriptive statistics, so to speak. So, what could be the takeaway from looking from the LNOB tree is that despite the education level or despite the wealth, you see stunting, high prevalence of stunting in these groups. So, you could say stunting is observed even in this group of people, not necessarily because maybe stunting is not significantly lower for this group of people with specific characteristics. So that would be the takeaway connecting LNOB tree. And again, as Delta mentioned, this is not causal relationship, so just bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Aram. Thank you very much for the question. It's definitely like food for thought, and like the more that we think about it, the more the model can change. We can look into it more in detail. But if you remember from my earlier presentation yesterday, also like there were 5 steps to LNOB analysis. This is step 1. step 2 and 3 goes more deeper into specific location and causal explanation of like why are you observing what you're observing. So yeah, but yeah, I'm glad that like these type of questions are coming to our minds. For example, I think that if we were to include mother's education in there, it would be a much more informative tree than it currently is, because it's the highest level of education in the household. It could be the father's education, that one. It could be you know, a teenager's education. It could be anyone's. So we just picked the highest level of education there. To be a bit more informative, I think that would be like we can have a look and improve this further. And I know there's 2018 data. You know, things might have. I'm sure we saw that there's a bit of there's improvement from 2013 to 15. So there must be a bit of improvement from 15 to 18, and hoping that during COVID things didn't regress too much. So I'm mindful of time. So maybe we can do just one region and then break it for lunch. And when we come back, we can look into wasting and overweight quickly, and then we move to LFS data. So for the regions, similar setup. We are selecting the region by the codes that we have. Here we have all the codes for different. We did it for autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao. It's just alphabetically the first one. I'm sorry about it. Always to another one. I think I remember we had Davao there, right? So it's for Davao. We can do it for Davao, and then let's look at stunting there. Again, we are similar to what Sejal had you called it earlier. We are filtering the data just for the region that we selected. Then we are doing picking the parameters for this region. And you know, because it might be a smaller region, it usually I think it might make better sense to be a bit less restrictive and allow that the 5% of sample at the bottom for the node. So we add our parameters here, and we have the model here. We're going to run our part with all those information, and then we can plot our tree. And so this one is for the selected region Davao. Here, the prevalence of it's close to the national average, just under 1/3, but the furthest behind actually has a higher stunting rate, and they are lower educated, and children with households with more than 2 children, and males. So for the furthest behind, the wealth of the household did not appear in the tree in this region. And we can maybe go back to ARM region. I think that one was that one had even higher stunting, if I recall correctly. So I'm just changing the code for that, rerunning this so that we can and then maybe I need to update this to region 2 so that we can correctly filter our data. Oh, but I think we've already done it, right? So let's run it up until here. Oh no, yeah. Okay, that was my bad because it's say region 1 here. I need to do it here. Bring this back. So filtering our data again. So note that we have a smaller sample. It's now 1085. So here it matters that we don't want to go below 50. It could be, right? So this mean bucket is now important, the absolute criterion fine. Follow the same arguments, same formula, and the same coding of the tree, but for a different region. So here it's now it's much more detailed because we lowered it to 5%. I'm not sure if I can read it, but I think it's around 62% for the furthest behind, and it's actually urban with households over two children, and then where highest level of education is lower. For this region, the stunting rate is 45%. And we can estimate the D-index for this. Again, it's a barrier, so we have this 1 minus the barrier, right? The same formula, the same code. So by running this, we can get this is for the national, so we're using the overall data use. So we see that the index is 0.08, not too bad. So prevalence is relatively high, but at least everyone is high together. And then if you go to region 1 that we use and see what the inequality looks like in that region, selected region, we see that it's slightly higher than the national one. So for the Muslim Mindanao, it's almost 10% for the index. So I think that's it for now. We're already over time. When we come back, we'll just comment out some of these so that we can visit the wasting and overweight, the other two indicators from SDG 2.2.2, and we go to LFS afterwards. Thank you so much, and we're almost there. Thank you for your patience.
we have our DataFrame, and we have 16,000. DataFrame is there. Let me just check by the way with virtual participants. Can everyone hear? If they can't hear, they also won't see.
I hope hopefully virtual can hear me. Okay, looks like we lost the echo. So we loaded our data frame, same data frame that was prepared in STATA, 16,368 observations. Those are children under 5, followed 4, and we have these 17 variables in there. So we'll add the 18th variable with this piece of code where we're just creating a new variable, replicating the sample weight, and we're going to now create our data use. So for data use, we use stunting, but now we're doing pacing, so I'm going to turn off this one, and I'm going to turn on this line 8, which gives us data use bar to tab for the wasting variable. And then we have our circumstances again here, poorer household, highest education, highest household education. This is for the household debt. Then we have the sex, male, female, urban, rural, number of children under 5. And then we have the descriptive statistics here for, this is again stunting, so we can turn these on and we turn off the sample weight for wasted. So I'll run this piece of code here. So we have 16 again. The number of observations didn't change. All children. I mean, this was already a clean data, so none of those missing or those inadmissible weight, height variables. Children are out anyways. So, but we added new variables, or we renamed and recreated our circumstances. And then we see that it's about 7% for the for prevalence of wasting in the Philippines, based on National Nutrition Survey 2015. I think the estimate is around 7.1, so we're quite close to the official estimate. And when we focus on non-poor or top 60% households in urban areas, their prevalence of wasting for children in living such households is slightly lower at 6.1%. Just to see a descriptive statistic. We can move into our card. So that's step 4. Same as before, we have a vector of our circumstances. We have our formula string. We have our title string for the plot. And we add our arguments to the R part formula, CP chosen, UV chosen, node. 3 methods is ANOVA. And everything else stays the same. In some of your folder, in some, like it could be the case that UV chosen equals 11. We may have made a mistake, or we may have forgotten to update it. This could be an 11. So if this is an 11, then you're dividing it by 11 because it's equivalent to multiplying it by 9%, because 1 over 11 is 9%. That's there was the earlier way of loading it, and we thought it was a little bit unnecessarily complicated. So here I updated it. This may be a bit different in your code. But as my colleagues kept saying, we'll share the latest version for you after the training. So we run this part for parts so that our estimates and stores all the estimates in treated, and then we'll plot treated. Now, I didn't change something. I didn't change the name of the variable for the plot, so it's still saying stunting. So I'm just going to come here and I'm going to update the name here and put it wasting. When I rerun it, now we have wasting. So as we know, by now comfortable with the LNOB, the regression phase, prevalence at national level is 7%, and then this is split by wealth of household as the most important variable. The first split happening, it's not so much different maybe, but it's close with 6% among poorer households and 8% among poorer households and 6% among non-poor households. And among non-poor households, we see that those where household heads have higher education, wasting is around 5% for children living in such households. There are 2,332 such households in total. That's 15% of the sample. And that's our furthest ahead in this variable. Furthest ahead, furthest behind is on the other extreme, and it's about 10%, and it includes poorer households, male children, and male children who live in households that have at least 2 children. So at least they have one more sibling. And then we have the rest of terminal nodes. Furthest behind, while prevalence rate for them is 10%, they constitute 11% of the total population. Total population, the total child population that we have in sample, right? These 16,000 children, but they're representative. So this was our national level 3. As you inquire more into this, you can change, add more indicators to this at national level. You can change the CP factor, the complexity parameter on mean be chosen. This could be 0.05, for example, if you want to get a bit more detail. If we do that, we'll just rewrite onto treated, and then we plot it. So we now have a much more detailed tree. So we see when we allow more observations to be contained in the end nodes, we are allowing the tree to be a little bit more detailed. But as the tree gets more detailed, we're unable to make generalizations also. There's a cost to having splits and to have very branched out big trees. So in this decision tree or regression tree literature, there's also something called tree pruning. So you're cutting the branches, and it depends really on it's a family of methodologies. So it also depends what sort of outcome variable you have. So we have here binary outcome 0, 1, but sometimes you could insert continuous variables as outcome. And there could be different methods to be used in doing those data pruning. There are quite a bit of interesting materials out there if you'd like to pursue those other options. So here we are sticking to more the 0, 1 SDG related indicators. So that's at national level. I think furthest behind didn't really change, it's still like 0.99, but I think the furthest ahead changed a little bit. It's 0.42, and it's even rural, I think, households. Interesting. We can do this for the region. I think let's go to a different region now. Let's go to number 2, Cagayan Valley. I think we don't need to change anything here except for maybe the we can keep this one as it is. I'll just add here a new line just for a new so that we don't keep doing the same region over and over again. And we look forward to your feedback at the end. You can tell us these type of things because we'll replicate these trainings in different countries. So feedback is most welcome. So let's define our region as the Kagayan Valley, number 2 in data. And we filter our data for that. There is only 815 observations, 815 children from that. So I think it's good that we're keeping it at 0.055%. If there's 49 of children in the end node, that's the absolute criteria, not split any further. And then we continue here, so we run that, so we can run this one now. For cards, the title string will have to update just this part because it's not this region anymore. Formula string stays the same. And we can, just before replicating our tree, we need to change the title. It's no longer stunting, it's wasting. So here in Kagayan Valley, the prevalence rate is very close to the national rate, it's again 7%. But the furthest behind is much higher. Furthest behind is double the prevalence of the regional average of 7%, it's 40%. And who are they? They're boys from actually non-poor households, right? Poor household is 0, so they're top 68 households, where highest level of education is lower or secondary. And there's a pretty, the split here is quite wide. I mean, there must have been a nice utilization of some square layers here. With this such two different distinct groups, right? The tertiary educated at 7%, at regional average, and the furthest behind is 14%. First ahead, they're girls. So again, this is 0 to 5 year old children, right? So it's girls from poor, non-poor households in Kagayan. So we can go ahead and estimate the index for wasting. We don't need to change anything anymore. The name of the indicator changed, but we call it bar 2 tab. This is why it helps to keep that bar 2 tab, so we don't need to change too many things when we're moving ahead and replicating stuff. And so we can run this. This is at national level for wasting. So the D index is 0.01. That's a very low D index. That's I think a good sign. And then we can do it for the region. I think it's going to be a little bit bigger than, it's 0.033, so it's 3 times higher D index. And we're saying here arm, but it's not arm because we define it as Kagayan Valley up there. So we can change this to Kagayan Valley here also. Okay. So that was wasting. What's wasting defined as? What do we look at? Something is height or age. Right? Yes. Then we have wasting. So it can be weight for age or weight for height. Is weight for height or weight for age? Now I'm going to overweight. I think overweight is wasting for height. Weight and height comes in overweight. But we can wasting is weight for height, you say. Okay, let's look at what we have on our platform. Right?
this is for like the platform we have the SDG indicator, which is the malnutrition.
It doesn't say there. Okay, then yes, we go with that. But we should add this to the platform. Okay. But wasting captures short-term malnutrition, right? And stunting captures long-term malnutrition. And so they're looking at different things. That's why they included in SDGs. Now we can go to the last indicator in NNS, which is overweight. So here we just we can rewrite that. Maybe again, let's clean it up. We started fresh for overweight. We read our data, which is the EK of this data file. We add our sample weight. And we're going to create now our data use, which will include our outcome variable and also circumstances. And here we have to turn on data use or to tab for overweight. The rest is the same, circumstances are the same. But here we'll have to yeah, maybe we can skip this. Or we could just replicate it and use it for overweight. Or we can just go to cards as opposed to looking at script stats. So now we're running the cards, same as before. Maybe at initial level at national, we can keep it at 9%. For the annual formula string stays the same. Circumstances like the string, they're all the same, so we can run this code. Then our estimate, store everything in tree fit, and then we plot the tree, but we have to rename it's no longer overweight. Now we're overweight. Okay, so when we look at overweight, poorer households, richer households, there's a big difference coming from the wealth already more than twice difference. So poorer households, prevalence of overweight is much lower than poorer households. It's at 2.1%, which is about half of the national average. So the national average is really carried by the top 60% households, where it's 5.4% prevalence for overweight among children. And the furthest ahead, interestingly, furthest behind is top 60% or richer households, where head of the household has tertiary education. Among them, 7.8% is the prevalence rate. And the furthest behind, first ahead is poorer households with lower education, where overweight is not an issue. This makes sense, right? But also this is informative on the outcomes. One expects always, poorer, rural, lower educated households are first behind. When it comes to overweight, I was mentioning yesterday, there's some indicators where it's urban, more educated households or women who are furthest behind. So it's showing that sometimes there can be surprises that comes out of it, and it could be like against stereotypes. We can do again for the let's stick to the same province, Cagayan Valley. We can do our 3 at regional level. So we keep it at 5% now, because we remember that our region data is quite small, with 815 children in there. Nothing changes for the model. The only thing that's changing is the name of the indicator on the plot. So when we do it again, we see, what do we see? It's a bit difficult to see, but so when it's difficult to see, I try to go to the table. And we can do a summary. No, print summary 350, and I have an extra parentheses there. So we can go to the bottom. So the root node is around 4% prevalence, and then we have different splits happening here. We have there's 7%. I think that's the highest, 7.6 or 7.5%. That's the furthest ahead, and then furthest behind is probably this overeducated, the poor house. So similar to the national one, here it's 1.8%. And we can go ahead and calculate the index at national level for overweight. It's 0. We can do it again for the region. Again, really, it's also 0. So the index in this inequality is minimal. So this was our notebook for NNS data. Thank you very much once again to Eldridge and team from Food and Nutrition Research Institute. We're grateful for access to the 2015, and we would love to work with you for the 2018 one if you'd like to do more work with that one to see whose work is behind at national level or at provincial level. Are there any questions at this point before we move to LFS? Yeah, there's one quick, maybe a microphone, if you could have to back.
For the overview, I would like to point out that if you can run the statistics in the constant data use data table, will encounter the NDs because overview is NDs.
Right, that's true.
So if you try to look at the summary of the 350 earlier, you'll find that you take 179 missing balance.
Okay.
So if you try to run the whole for the weighted mean and you didn't specify the removal of NDs, you'll get ND values at the weighted mean.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So the issue where that's absolutely right, and that's probably why I didn't wait to be overweight. And the issue is that we have the variable for those 16,386, let's say, observations. We have a value for their stunting and their wasting. But there are some, like 300 or 400 children for whom there is no overweight, it's NA. But I didn't want to bring another data use where we would filter out the NAs of overweight, so I didn't want to go in there. But I think if I could give extra credit, I would give it to you for sure. Thank you. All right, so if there are no other questions, or if you can think about it as I'll open the last our notebook for LFS. This is a much bigger data set. And we're looking at the entire working age population. I'll just start with the running packages and installing library, sourcing the packages, and then maybe a few words here. So what we have is LFS 2020, which is given to us in response to our official request. We use this in the social outlook publication, which was on your desks yesterday. We try to see this in employment in the Philippines. You'll see some estimates there. We didn't do any analysis there, but that's the reason why we had access to LFS earlier. And given that we had access, we thought we could show it as extra data in this training. So in the training, we can, in this notebook, we can start with the labor force participation rate first, and just to give you a overview that this is LFS 2020, all 4 quarters merged together. And there were in total 717,000 people almost. Out of this, around 510,000 make up the working age population. So for labor force, so we have a few indicators here. We will start with labor force, we can then go to unemployed. Then we have a composite indicator which we call full job. And it takes value of one is someone is the labor force, wage salary employed with full-time and permanent job. So this is like getting a little bit into the quality of job. And then finally we have another indicator, it's called decent employment. It's also a composite indicator. And it takes the value of 1 if an employed person is wage or salary with permanent and full-time job, working at least 40 hours, and for a wage rate that is higher than minimum wage. So this was us trying to study the decent work agenda and looking at what variables are available on LFS and try to come up with a composite indicator that could kind of show like prevalence of decent employment. I'm putting it in quotation marks, and I alluded to this yesterday. ILO strictly forbids, not forbids, but ILO says this is not a good idea because this work agenda has so many different components, and I think they were mentioning that there will be maybe 84 indicators that this work agenda captures. You know, things like security at work, or like occupational safety and health, your rights, your rights to many different things. And in LFS, we will not get such information. None of the LFSs around the world will not have this type of extensive information. So for ILO, when they think about it, they sometimes say that, you know, you can maybe just focus on individual indicators like wage, salary, employment, which usually captures the formal employed people, and that could be a proxy. So they're approaching it more from a proxy perspective, and they're saying, you know, like it's an illusion that you can measure decent employment because nobody can. So this is just for training purposes. Don't code us, or not don't code us, but like let's not attach too much value to what comes out of here. It's just for having some sort of like additional indicators in there. That's number 1 caveat. Number 2 caveat, I know we have all PSA here. We may have made mistakes in estimating labor force on unemployment because this was quite a big data set with lots of variables used in estimating labor force and unemployment rate. And they're usually estimated at quarterly level. Here we're looking at annual level, so things may not match. So again, don't worry about that. Once you have this code, you can bring here the data that you have, that you clean yourself, and with the correct, you know, ways, the correct definition of labor force participation, unemployment, and the other indicators there. But I think we try to stick to the overall, you know, the standard definition of labor force, which includes employed and unemployed, in working age population, and in the unemployed. I think we have a few here. We follow one of the publications from PSA, those without work, currently available for work, seeking work, and then there are also some who are not seeking work for 5 specific reasons, like being discouraged, awaiting results from job application, bad weather, temporary instability, and waiting for rehire or job call. So they might not be seeking jobs, but if they're not seeking jobs for these reasons, we still keep them under unemployment. But still, you know, when you look at these results, you may see that maybe the numbers are not aligning exactly what you have in your mind. Don't worry, it's totally our mistake. You can assume it that way. And the point is to give you the code so that you can expand on it and improve and make it much better. Okay. So those are indicators, but we're starting with the labor force first. So let's not commented, all the rest are commented. We have our data, we're defining our data paths here in step 1. So I go ahead and run this. So then we are going to run our data frame. We're going to read our data. So this is the big data. As I was saying, there are 716,000 households, individuals, and we have 22 variables. This is a reduced form. We didn't include all the variables that come from it. It's just the ones that we will need. Then we add to this the sample weight, as usual. And then we construct our data use. So in data use, we need first and foremost our outcome, which is labor force. So it's not commented here. Yes, we're going to keep it. Then we have our circumstances, residence, age group, sex, and level of education. And then we're going to do a weight in on this to see what's the labor force participation. So the main difference that happens with from moving from DataFrame EF to data use is that we lost people who are not working age population. So we dropped from 717,000 observations to 510,000 observations, and the labor force participation is around 61%. This is for 2020, not a good year, beginning of COVID, right? So like these are not easy years to look at, especially for employment indicators, but it's a recent year and we get access to it. So then we run the cards. So here see we chose 11 because then we're dividing it. So I'm not going to change it. You can see that they're like alternative ways of incorporating this information into the node. But everything really stays the same. Circumstances we define up, formula string, title string, they're all the same. So we can go ahead and run this piece of code so that our estimates the cards tree into the three fit object, and then we can have a look at the tree. So when we look at tree, this is a bit detailed tree. I'm not sure if it's quite visible to you, but we see the labor force participation on top is 61%. That's the labor force participation rate that we got from our, let's say, interpretation of the variables and definition, trying to get as close to the PCA definitions. And then the first bit we see is happening by sex. So female and male. So for male, the participation rate is around 76%, and for women it's around just under 50%, it's 47%. And among women, there is a group, and they are youth, so they're 15 to 24-year-olds. For them, the participation rate is around 26%. So they're the first behind in the labor force participation in 2020. First ahead, that's a bit more structured. So they're men, they're adults or elderly, and then they're in the education, I see lower, and maybe it's secondary type education. I can't read that. And then there is residents, and actually rural residents, they are the first ahead. I think they have around 90% labor force participation rate. So men living in rural areas who are adult or above 65 and with lower education, they have the highest labor force participation. We can do this again. This was at national level. We can repeat this at sub-national level. So the regions come a little bit differently in LFS, but still, I think they're probably they're being slightly different. But I think it's the official categorization. So here we have an example for Manila. So that's a different region. Let's keep that and let's continue for Manila. We filter our data use for Manila. So now we have about 78,000 observations. That's quite high. So we can pick like 11, which was corresponding to 9% in region 1. So we can run this also. Title string, border string, they're all staying the same. And we run our LNOB tree for Manila, National Capital Region, labor force participation rate. So it's 60%, similar to almost identical to the national average. And the tree is slightly different. This time, the tree is splitting by age first. Recall it was by sex for the national. So in Manila, we have youth versus adult and all older people. So labor force participation for youth in Manila, youth is 15 to 24 by the way. Their participation rate is 36%, while the adult and old elderly group, they're those above 25, let's say, their participation rate is 68%, so almost close to double of youth. And then when we look at the labor force participation rates, there is the lower secondary, no education, primary education. They are the 26% and the furthest behind. And when we go furthest ahead, they are men with lower secondary or secondary education with 86% labor force participation rate. So this is how it looks like for Manila. We could go up here and change the number of the region. I'm not sure if you know if you can identify the number code. Maybe that's why we kept the national capital Manila. But you guys, in owner of data, you may have this easier, so you could follow this and do the labor force participation rate later on for other regions. I think in this LFS there is a variable that captures capital separately. That's how we got that one. We can calculate the index in labor force participation rate. Same formula. So we can go ahead and run it. So it's 0.17 mid-range for the index, so that's pretty high. This is at the national level, but still within the boundaries of what we consider is like normal, under 0.3. Then we can do the index for Manila. Let's see if the index in Manila is higher or lower or similar. But it's quite similar. So Manila is kind of representing the national of 0.17 the other one is 0.17, 9 to 0.18. So slightly higher equality Manila than national average. Any questions for labor force participation rate? I mean, you can go on unemployed. I'm not seeing nothing maybe from chat also. I don't see any chat. So let's turn off our labor force and go to unemployed indicator. We can override our data frame. And data frame is there. We'll add our sample rate, which is there. And we are going to add our bar to that, which is the critical thing. So I'm turning these on, off, and then we're adding unemployed bar data use. And we want only variables in data use that has we're filtering out missing variables in unemployment. So again, working age population, and those who are out of labor force will be dropped. The rest of the variables stay the same, so we can do we can replicate the weighted mean just to let's see how those are we unemployed. We can have a national descriptive weighted mean. So what we get is 40%. If memory serves me right, this is way higher than what was PCA reporting on unemployment. I think it was 9 or 10 or 12% maybe. I'm not sure. So this is where I realized that we are probably not doing exactly the same data preparation. So don't take this. This is not right. PSA is right. And we run the card on this the same as before. We're not changing anything. The only thing that will change is the name in the plot. So as opposed to LFD, we'll have it unemployed. And let's see who's left behind in unemployed. So this is a negative indicator. So our furthest behind will be on the right hand side, characterized by red. And it looks like we're splitting by age and youth. For youth, unemployment is much higher than their furthest behind. And I think it's around 26% unemployment rate for youth in 2020. And furthest ahead would be adults or like people who are about 25, who are rural, who have lower education, who have primary education. For them, unemployment rate is under 1%. Sorry, under 9%. So they're furthest ahead. They're the least likely to be unemployed at the time of survey and as per our definition. We can go ahead and look at unemployment in Manila. We'll just rewrite it here, but nothing is really going to change because we did it for Manila earlier also. So we could just go to card directly. But we'll just change the name here from LFD to unemployed. Let's see who is left behind in unemployment in Manila. So in Manila, unemployment rate was 17%, so a little bit higher than national average. Again, youth is furthest behind. It's 30% unemployment for them. This is not, I don't think unemployment is an SDG indicator. It might be actually, I think it's an SDG indicator. But there's also the not in education, training, and the need. That's also a very nice variable. Maybe it's possible to get it from LFS. It might be, not sure, but mix, it's from LFS. Okay, yeah, so that's something that could be added to this to see, you know, among youth who is not in education, employment or training. So that's a very interesting youth-oriented SDG indicator. And furthest ahead is again, this time it's a bit different in Manila. Those least likely to be unemployed here is those people about 25, women, and with higher education, tertiary education. Among them, unemployment rate is 12%. Then we have the other terminal nodes, which you can explore later. We can do the D index at national level to see how different population groups have are different from the national average of 14%. So the D index is 0.14. This is slightly lower than the D index we saw in labor force participation rate, which was around 0.17. We can redo this for Manila, and this is for Manila. It's slightly lower. So it's different than labor force participation rate. So LFS is often a very rich data set. You could potentially add more indicators into this. You could play with the parameters of cards, do it for different regions, different provinces, or at national level to see who's furthest behind in labor supply or unemployment. Any questions, suggestions? If not, then we can continue with this third indicator, full job. It is called, maybe not a very nice name. But so this is, as I was saying, it's a composite indicator that takes the value of 1. If someone in the labor force is wage, salaried, employed, I mean, if someone is employed, but employed in a wage or salaried manner with full-time and permanent job. Maybe as opposed to running this bit by bit, we can, because they're all the same, we can just turn this down and open our third indicator for data use var2 tab. Circumstances stay the same. Card formula is staying the same. So we could run it all from this bit. And then we're going to change this area here because it's no longer unemployed. It's full job. Okay, so our data use, by the way, changed quite a bit, right? Because now we're looking only at employed people. So there are 260. So a third of our data frame remained. The other 2/3 is gone. So we're only looking at people who are employed. And among these, certain people are 1. So those who have wage, salaried, permanent jobs, full-time jobs, and 0 otherwise. So they're also employed. So there's no unemployed here also now. And when we do this, we see that the first split is happening by education, which makes sense. So those who are with higher education, they have 64 among those who are in tertiary education, 64% have such jobs, full jobs, and the rest of the education groups, for them the average is quite low at 38%. And then furthest ahead is urban individuals who have higher education. So for them, 69% is their access rate. So they constitute 20% of the employed sample. Then there are tertiary educated people who are in rural areas. Now their size is much smaller, but among them, it's still quite high, 56% prevalence of full jobs. We really need to come up with a new name for this. It's not that intuitive. So who's furthest behind? Those who have lower than tertiary education, that splits towards the left, and then rural areas, and then those who are even lower than secondary education. So among them, 24% have such jobs. They constitute about 20% of the employed sample. So the furthest behind and furthest ahead, they're of equivalent size. And but the access to jobs is almost 3 times different. One is 0.24, so 24%. The other one is like almost 70%. So again, only for the regional analysis, we can only identify cards for Manila. So we'll select Manila and filter out our data use for Manila. On top, you can see that we dropped under 40,000 now. It was 78,000 before for labor force. But now we're only focusing on employed people. So we can, I think, keep the parameters at the chosen ones here. And here, well, title string needs to change, of course, and I haven't changed it before. That was by mistake, and nobody noticed. So I think lunch was good. And we're going to plot this tree. So I'm going to change the plot name also to full-time job. So this is Manila. 68% is the average for Manila. A similar kind of division is happening with tertiary educated and non-tertiary educated. But among tertiary educated this time, as opposed to national, sex comes into play. Women and men are furthest ahead with 78%. Women are just behind with 76%, not that behind among tertiary educated. If you were to go to a parametric setting and test this out, maybe there is no difference, statistically significant difference. But here we see that those two groups, they contributed to R squared sufficient enough that after tertiary education, CART decided to split full-time jobs into female and male groups within tertiary education. Among those who are with lower education in Manila, women have 50% access to such full-time jobs, and so half of women have access to such jobs and half doesn't. So again, we can do the D-index. This is at national level for this new indicator 0.16, just under the D-index for labor force participation, but above unemployment. Then we can do it again for Manila. As you have access to different province rates, you can look at how different provinces are doing in this indicator. You can change this indicator. Maybe this is not a good indicator. But here, like noticeably, the index dropped quite dramatically, right? At national level, it was 0.16. In Manila, it's 0.07. So less than half of equality. Manila is doing well in this, and which is probably understandable, right? Manila reminds me of Istanbul. I'm from Turkey. Manila is like Istanbul. We say the earth is golden. So everybody comes to the metro. Yeah, Istanbul is also metropole. All right, so any questions? Last indicator, and this is decent employment. Here we add a few more variables into this categorization. So now we're saying they should work at least 40 hours. Why at least 40 hours? Because we don't want to include time-related underemployment into what we would call decently employed people. But what we're not excluding is if people working too much. That's also not good for decent employment. So we didn't do that here, but that's something to be considered. If one day you would like to come up with a universal definition of decent employment that nobody will probably agree to, and then we're saying that at least the wage rate should be minimum wage. We did here, we are doing again 0-1 variables, but imagine you could run CART for the wage rate. So you see who's first behind in the wage rate. It's a continuous variable. And then you can run with all those circumstances in there. And notice that we don't have any wealth or expenditure or income variable in this. We didn't want to include it as a circumstance because it's there explaining one another a little bit. But if you're interested in wage dynamics, then you can have wage as your dependent variable, if you will, or your var2 tab, and then you can still go ahead and split wage rate by the circumstances. Because it's a continuous variable and it's not 0-1, it's going to be a very, very big tree. But then there are ways of pruning that because it's going to find thresholds in the wage rate. It's going to split by, let's say people with less than 200,000 pesos and above. I just made that number up. I don't know, but it's going to, but it's still possible. It can still split binary the two
the continuous variables. So just checking the code here, we'll turn this on and off. We can just run this whole thing. We don't need to redo the whole. We might lose a little bit of observation because we added more variables in there, and they may be missing variables in those. So I'm going to go ahead and run it all the way until here. And in formula string, well, we did var2 tab, title string, all good. We can run until here. Okay, our data use stays the same. That's great. So we call this decent employment. Let's see who is. Maybe let's not go too long. We plotted 3 for decent employment. So it's 46% for national average. So about half of employed could be considered decently employed in the Philippines by the definition that we used. And furthest ahead is again similar to what we found for the full job. So it's tertiary educated people in urban areas. For them, it's 70% decent employment. And for the furthest behind, it's people with lower education in rural areas. For them,
I think we might have a in line when you construct the data use.
Yeah.
DataFrame, it seems like it's a duplication for full job.
Oops. Okay. Oh yeah, I didn't turn it on. Right. Perinatal, this is decent.
And also, the inequality. But it's salary.
It's yeah, that's true. This one, right? Exactly. Great job. So what's this now? Do I remember? I don't remember. So I'm going to data use, and I'm going to decent employment. So it's called decent employment. Thank you very much for that. Decent employment. So I think now we're good. Yeah, I copy pasted here, but then didn't change it here. And this should be also decent employment. Let's change before we forget. Because we'll give this to you later. All right, let's rerun until here. Okay, so less than 46. So decent employment is lower, 38% of 38% decent employment at national level. And then it's again splitting by education, tertiary education versus lower than tertiary education. Then we go to urban areas and men. For them, for this group, decent employment is 62%, or access to decent employment is 62%. But if you go to lower education, for the furthest behind, we go to the light green area. So we see that it's the lower than tertiary educated, rural areas, no education or primary education. For them, it's less than 10%, the access to decent employment, the way that we define. So we can go ahead and do it for Manila. Let's see how it looks like in Manila. So notably, we're losing quite a bit of information because I think we're missing information, missing values. So now this is decent employment. Oops.
we'll turn the so for Manila, it's a bit higher. So half or 53% on average have access to decent employment in Manila. Again, education is the most important variable. The first split is happening by that. And as we're splitting by buying in a binary way, you know, the tertiary education is popping up again as the base for the furthest ahead group. And then men among tertiary education, they have higher access to decent employment. So 2/3 of them have access to decent employment. Women are right behind at 64%. And then on the left-hand side, we have lower educated people, and among lower educated women have 28% access. So there is a clear policy implication here. You can see the gap between women and men among lower educated individuals, the gap is wider, but the gap is not as wide among tertiary educated women when it comes to this particular indicator. We can create a D-index. D-index on its own may not be so informative. Usually we do this for a lot of things and then we compare. So imagine you have your indicator and then you do your index for Philippines at the national level, and then you do the same for all the provinces and you compare. That's when I think the index becomes a little bit more informative to see, you know, where inequality is much higher. So 0.23 inequality is much higher than any of the indicators that we've seen so far. So the more that we narrow down on the quality of employment, we've seen that inequality increased. That's 0.23. We're approaching the upper end of the index. At national level, Manila might be a little bit lower the index, my impression. Yeah, because we've seen that the rates were not so different. And there it's 0.11. So Manila is doing much better in decent employment inequality-wise as opposed to Philippines at large. So I think this is it for R. We can have one last brain break, and then I know it's coming to our final coffee break. And after that coffee break, or while you're having your coffee break, I can give you a short presentation of how we use this or how it can be used in publications, presentations, or how we think about it. And then we close it to close the training. Are there any questions before we do our brain break? And for brain break, I leave it to Sejal. I'm not going to dance. I hate dancing. Yeah, I can keep it also here. Now for this, it's easier.
So just for that reason and that statement, Sasha is going to have to do a special solo dance for us.
Not even in my wedding. I didn't dance.
So stand up. Yeah, let's do some stretching. Yeah, stretching sounds good. I need my neck to be stretched. I don't know if it's not wrong. Let me stretch out your neck. And add some unicorn magic. The jumping effects don't hit the person next to you. All right. Who doesn't like to dance other than who doesn't like to dance? Okay, so who likes to dance? All right, that doesn't make any sense. Come on, we're statisticians, programmers, we gotta make sense. Who likes to sing?
We're gonna have a solo dance performance and a solo singing performance. All right, I'll spare you. If you feel like it at the end, we can have a performance. I might get in trouble with ESCAP if I make people sing. Let's stick to true or false. Oops. Okay. These are a little bit more thinking. The dates 4/4, 6/6, 8/8, 10/10, 12/12 will all fall on the same day of the week in a given year. Nobody take your phones up. And only if you get this question right do you get your certificate. True that side, false that side. One. Okay. If we have any virtual participants that want to write true or false. Dum, dum, dum. Has anyone heard of the word doomsday? So this is true. These days are actually called doomsdays. And there's an algorithm called doomsday to calculate these dates. Right? Okay, so anytime anyone says doomsday now, you're gonna think algorithm. There's always something. Okay, at one point, Apple launched a clothing line. Possible. I don't know. Think it was couture, or do you think it was t-shirts? Which side's true? That side's true, that side's false. Yeah, true or false? Or do you guys really think it's false, or you just don't want to move? True and false. Okay. Apple jeans. It's true. In 1986, 1 year after Steve Jobs left Apple, they started a clothing line with the Apple logo. And maybe it'll come back with gray turtlenecks and what did he wear? Gray turtlenecks and something, black pants or something. So who knows? They might come back with it. And then all those people who chose wearing the same clothes every day can go and buy that uniform. So a little anecdote. So yesterday, all three of us went out and bought banana ketchup. And we will let you all know how our respective families and friends enjoyed the banana and how we enjoyed the banana ketchup. But we were very excited and we stood and we were like, oh my God, there's so many options. So thank you for teaching us about banana ketchup. Okay, so true or false? We as humans share 70% of our DNA with bananas. True and false? About this group over here. Okay, just for that, you have to do a banana peel. Ready? Bring your hands up. All right, so was it true or false? Oops. It's false. However, we only share 50% of DNA with bananas. Still quite a bit. So I would say it's a little bit of both. And our last question for the training. Thank you all for entertaining me with these brain breaks. Everyone here will use the LNOB methodology after this training. False? True. This is good for this group. All right. Oh, yes. Ooh, we got some truths in the chat. Thank you. Great. Okay, and one last wave, and I'm going to take a video of the wave this time. You ready? We'll start with the room in the front, okay? 1, 2, 3. Thank you, guys. Almost done. You guys have been an amazing group, really well focused and all very intelligent, we can tell, and we can't wait to look forward to how you are going to use the LNOB methodology in your work. I think we have our coffee break. They're bringing, okay. So
I can't take it now. You've been squeezed there, sorry. Sharing the attendance sheet or did she say? Thank you. So in the chat, we have the attendance sheet, by the way. If you can also fill that one up. I know I see another one on the back that's been signed. That's great. At the very end, we'll ask for an evaluation before we take the picture and certificates. I'll just wait a little bit so that everyone gets their blueberry muffin, and then while you're nibbling on that, no more running code. You can sit back, relax. This is the last part. Well, I'll talk very briefly, and then we'll finish it up. Unemployed, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Nana. Just checking in once in a while.
Hi. While you are snacking on the blueberry muffin, we also shared another link to the evaluation form. So that is different from the attendance form. So if you could fill out the evaluation form that we just shared in the chat, it will be very helpful for us to learn what you thought of the training, and we could also try to improve based on the answers that we got today. So that would be great. Thank you.
No, you can keep that. Or yeah, come. Yeah. Okay, so I'll slowly start on our final session. I mean, virtually the final session. Next steps and application of LNOB methodology. And here we have the case of VNR. Has anybody heard about VNR or voluntary? Maybe some hands. Voluntary national reviews. Two hands. 3 hands. Okay. I'm sure PSA is the go-to place from other ministries who, when they're doing or it's usually Ministry of Economic Planning, I think, Ministry of Economy or Planning, which does the VNR. So on our first day, I think we mentioned that ESCAP is running a project, this LNOB project, building capacity across Asia Pacific, which we started in 2021. And this activity is part of that project. And this project is ending in 2024. And I think a couple of months ago, we started seeing the relevance of LNOB analysis for VNRs also. But there's actually a wider application and use of LNOB, not just VNR, but we use this VNR example, especially for countries which are preparing for their VNRs for upcoming high-level political forum in New York summer next year. So where can LNOB trees, where can we use these results? So it depends who's going to use these results. Here, due to space brevity, I just put the government and also RCO and UNCT, but academia is here, civil society is here, even private sector could be, so I'll expand on that too. So LNOB trees are, they are quite informative evidence that we can use in influencing and designing, implementing, monitoring, evaluating policies, the way that we can make policies a bit more effective and inclusive. So governments can use it for policy design and implementation. I know everyone here, most of you have maybe contributed to the Philippine National Development Plan coming up 2023, 2028. So LNOB trees probably didn't make it there, but or LNOB results, but some, maybe not ESCAP LNOB results didn't make it there, but other LNOB results hopefully made it there. But other sectoral policies, strategies could all benefit from LNOB analysis to understand who's furthest behind and what sort of inequalities we're seeing. It can help beyond design and implementation of policies, but also on monitoring and evaluation over time. What's happening to furthest behind group? Are they changing? What's their size? What's their access rate? And what is their composition? All these type of information are contained in our LNOB trees. Another example is this voluntary national reviews. So this one is, I think, every year from Asia Pacific, at least 10 countries voluntarily review their progress on SDGs. This year, I think there are 11 countries from Asia Pacific, and I thought I muted this. Sorry about this. Philippines is not there. Has Philippines done one VNR already? 3. Oh, that's a best practice. So yeah, Philippines might be paired in the future to showcase this to other countries. But this year we are working with countries like Mongolia, Turkmenistan, Maldives, Fiji, Cambodia, Vietnam, all part of VNR, and they're all trying to use LNOB results in their VNRs. Some of them have only 1 year of data, 1 round of survey. Vietnam, for example, has 3. Cambodia has 3. So we can show the evolution of their SDGs over time, before SDGs and after SDGs also. One can do such different analysis and track how things are going. And then, yeah, this basically can help prioritization of groups and provinces in policy development and implementation. Now, usually these type of trainings we do for a wider group, including government technical specialists, but also academia and UN City, civil society. In this case, we were a bit, it was a bit last minute organization. We weren't sure if this training would happen. It took a quite long time for fixing dates. But we're glad that it happened, and then we got you guys here, a great group of people, the right group of people who fixed our mistakes. So, you know, that's already a good sign. But we would usually have also people from ILO, UNICEF, you know, the different UN entities, Resident Coordinator's Office, UNDP, and they have something called Common Country Assessments. They're using LNOB results in these type of documents, or their project development documents, or this cooperation framework that they do with each country. So LNOB trees can feature there also. Civil society organizations can use LNOB results for advocacy, to raise awareness a little bit, and to raise awareness on their cause. Academia has a great role here. As we said, this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? Academic organizations, researchers, think tanks, they can dig deeper, maybe get inspired by some of the results, and then try to do more causal analysis or a country level analysis in this. So we are only, you know, as I was mentioning yesterday, covering 58 countries in Asia Pacific, of whom 29 has data. It's difficult to go deeper into specific countries, but we are very grateful that we have such a project which allows us to come to different countries and learn about at least the province names, you know, like at least we know a little bit about the Philippines, how it looks like. And we know that we need to go to Coron next time we come to Philippines. So those are some of the areas where we can use this. So on our platform, we didn't show you the entire platform, but we have some other graphs in there which can be helpful, and I'll show you 2 different types. The first one is, we call this the box plot, and it shows it shows a snapshot of access for the furthest behind and furthest ahead groups across all indicators for which they're available data for the Philippines here in this case. So all the data that we have for the Philippines is ranked here. And, you know, you'll remember now that the orange is the furthest behind, blue is the furthest ahead, and the gray represents the average. This chart is sorted by the average. So as you go down, this is on the y-axis, you have the indicators, and on the x-axis, you have the access rate or prevalence rate. All the indicators there, we covered only 5 indicators this training, but only, I think, 3 of them were from our platform, right? And we didn't, we really looked at clean fuel and secondary education, and any type of violence against women. So, for example, one thing that we can highlight here is early childhood education. So the blue color is early childhood education. Where is early childhood education? Or maybe, no, maybe we can, use of financial services is a better one. So we picked up 3 indicators here. I think this is showing the indicators that have the widest gaps between furthest behind and furthest ahead. So internet usage is one, where the gap is 84 percentage point, right? So the furthest ahead group, whoever they are, they have 90 among them. Usage of internet in the past 3 months regularly is 97%, while furthest behind is 13%. Use of financial services, that is another one with a 56 percentage point gap, and the clean fuels is another one where and we looked at this, we know that inequality is high in this with a D index that's about 0.3. So this is an alternative way of looking at inequality other than D index. This is just comparing 2 groups. So if you think about it, this is a simplistic way of looking at it, because D index would include information from all groups that's available for the indicator, while here we're looking at only 2 groups. So for standard ones, we have, I think, at least 12 groups that the index considers. But still, it gives you an important, I think, snapshot in terms of seeing how different indicators are doing. Latest year, one country, all indicators at one go. This chart is available on our platform. You can download it, you can use it. You can even, I think, filter out the indicators that you want. Maybe you want to thematically focus only on household indicators, so you could only have a chart for household indicators, or maybe you want just the education indicators, so you can filter out the rest and keep only the education variables. So this is one way of looking into inequalities across SDG indicators also, that we've seen people use in their analysis and reports. Another one that we can do is the overtime. So as you remember, Philippines, we were mentioning there's 2, on our platform, we had data from 2013 and 2017. So we can see how furthest behind is moving over time, and how average households are moving over time, and if the gap is decreasing, or if the gap is staying the same, or maybe the gap is decreasing. So furthest behind households are closing its gap with average households, particularly in access to electricity, thanks to a 34% increase in their access rate. So furthest behind groups really increased their access to electricity in the Philippines in 4 years. So if you think about it, it's also like 2013, right before SDGs, 2017, right before SDGs. The SDGs are just cutting it in the middle. At the same time, clean fuel is one of the indicators. It has the largest increase in gap over time. So the access of the furthest behind is not increasing, or maybe it's increasing a little bit. So if you see clean fuel, it's still increasing. The access rate of the furthest behind, it's still increasing. But the increase in the average household, that's much, much wider. So we can compare over time how they were doing, again, looking at it through all indicators at once. This is a chart that's also available on our website. So out of 10 SDG indicators listed here, we observe improvement in 6 indicators. That's a great that's a great improvement, actually. It's a great sign, and that there are 3 indicators where the situation is worsening: clean fuel, tertiary education for 35 plus age group, and family planning. So for some who look into these type of charts, they try to think about, like which indicators they should prioritize based on like how things are moving around or furthest behind groups. Another way of looking at it is doing these, line graphs where the blue line represents the average, and the orange line represents the furthest behind. And here you can also see the change over time from 2013-17. I grouped them here by different types of indicators. So here we are looking at household indicators that we have on our platform. I'm seeing skilled birth attendance, which is a typo. It might be another. It might be electricity. So when it's not basic drinking water, basic sufficient. There's a typo that we will fix this. It shouldn't be here. Skilled birth assistance is a woman's indicator. But just looking at it, electricity, we mentioned that there was a big increase, this 34% increase, that it's happening from 50% access to 67%. That's a big jump among furthest behind. And, you know, we don't see that much increase in or improvement in the average household, but it's still like close to 100%. Maybe next DHS round, the average households will be 100%. So we will not look too much into LNOB analysis in access to electricity. But we still look at it if the access rate among furthest behind is below 95%. So these are the two indicators that we have for women's health, I think, skilled birth assistance and family planning. The trend is parallel, so the gap is not really increasing or decreasing that much. Things are going positively, things are improving, but with the hope that we have is that the furthest behind accelerates more so that they catch up to the average, so that the orange one has a steeper slope than the blue one, so that they catch up over time. These are the education variables for which we have data. So secondary education, tertiary education, so they're all also kind of like parallel trends. Things are improving slightly, but the improvements are a little bit maybe better for average than the furthest behind in some. But yeah, these are the overtime results that you can have a look. This is not presented on our LNOB platform, but all the data can be downloaded and they're easily replicable Excel charts. So I think that's about it from my side. So we can have a Q&A session if you have any questions on the use or how we can go about it with LNOB analysis, if you have ideas. One thing to announce from my side is that this project that we have is ending in 2024. During lunch, I was explaining this to our colleagues, and we will have a conclusion conference in Bangkok next year. And in each country that we go to and do this technical training, we tell them, this is our second country. So we told this in Mongolia to the National Statistics Authority, also other the ministerial participants, that the more you use it, please let us know how you're using it, if it's being featured anywhere. And we would like to invite you to Bangkok so that you can showcase your experiences of using LNOB methodology, LNOB analysis to other countries in Asia Pacific, so that we can learn from another and then showcase, you know, how we can take a positive action towards developing inclusive policies that don't leave anyone behind. So that will probably be next year, 2023, March, April. So there is sufficient time. There is more than a year until then to kind of like keep the ball rolling, expand the analysis to other indicators, new data sets, and see, you know, what sort of results are coming, if they're helpful in any way to academia, to civil society, to government policies, anywhere. And then we would love to feature these initiatives and these results. So do we have any questions? Any final remarks, suggestions of LNOB? Maybe, I mean, what do you guys use for LNOB analysis? Is there something that you use for inequalities, or, you know, who's furthest behind? It's everybody talks about, you know, don't leave anyone behind, furthest behind. Well, you know, like in terms of like quantitative, have you ever come across like who's our competitive. I'm trying to get it. But yeah, hopefully we're and I think I hope we also made it clear that what we have is just one way of doing things, and it might not be the right thing to do. We're open. This is quite like a exercise, a statistical exercise, and we are here to just show one way of doing it. But you can go in alternative ways, and we're also happy to learn from you and update our models, our approach to this, so that we don't make mistakes. As you mentioned, none of us are I'm PhD economist. I usually had trouble with statistics. I love econometrics more. If are there any questions? Yeah.
It's not a question actually, but our team are in charge of the survey on income and expenditure. So we our last survey round is already available, and then we computed actually the inequality levels across the country, and then we did the regional levels too, and then I think this will be useful in our analysis for our next round, so we can try the LNOB methodology, because we are currently using this data for analysis. But we can also try this one if we can for our next round of our income and expenditure survey.
Thank you very much. This reminds me, for example, for the VNR, some countries they don't have their DHS coming up, but they did their income expenditure survey. And most of the indicators, SDG indicators we have on our platform, the indicators are available on household income expenditure surveys. We know about household indicators, sanitation, water, electricity, clean fuel. They're usually in the household income expenditure surveys. Education variables, they're all there. So for Cambodia, for example, which was trying to see what happened recently, the DHS is still not available. So for them, for example, we ran a LNOB analysis on their household income expenditure survey. And there, I think it's even better, because if you have the aggregate expenditure variable, in Philippines, we have one household income expenditure survey, maybe 2017. And I think there, the welfare rate, it was income, and the expenditure was not there. In the recent one, is it expenditure? Do you guys estimate the household expenditure, or is it the income? Both. Excellent. So I think usually, right, expenditure is better than income to proxy the household welfare. If you were to replace household wealth that we use in DHS with the quantiles of household expenditure, household per capita expenditure, I think that's a much better proxy that can help us even more. And you don't even need to do it by quantiles. You could enter it as a numeric variable also. Then you will get even much fine-tuner results. And with that, the example of what happens if we give social protection to people, how do their access to certain opportunities, do they increase or not? That's also possible to see. We are more than happy to bounce ideas. If you have any questions, any encounters, maybe I don't think you will need any help, but once you run this and you want to show the nicer trees, let us know. We have a small piece of code that can translate that results to a different mode, and then we just upload it to our website and then download the pictures for you, and you can use the nicer charts that's as opposed to our output. So gladly, please keep in touch, and this would be an excellent application that we could showcase next year, for example, or in the future. So before we go to the certificates, if you guys haven't done the evaluation that Arun was mentioning earlier, the QR code is here. We'd be very grateful for your feedback. I think there's like 5 questions or something. It's quite short. We'll send reminders on this also. But if you haven't done so, please leave your feedback for us, and we'll gladly improve the training curriculum style, more brain breaks, less brain breaks. That video Sejal took is completely, strictly confidential. It will not make itself to social media, do not worry. Okay, I think everyone must have filled their forms. I'm getting insider information from our team. So we can move to the certificates. Let's start with that. Okay. So we'll hand out the certificates. If you could raise your hand and we bring it to you. I'll move. So Miss Alena Maelanco. Congratulations. Miss Alisa Joy de Casis. Miss Anna Jean Pasasio. Oh, very bad. I need to learn Spanish. Maybe Arum, I think you know Spanish, don't you? Or you're studying it.
But are the names in Spanish actually spoken like Spanish? Yeah? Okay. Sarah May M. De Castro. Irina Clara B. Asunción. Cecil R. Lastimaso. Thank you. Cheddar D. Sumange. Shirley Valdez. Online. Okay, we will send this. Eldridge Perez. Congratulations. Jane Yvette Dalan. Hannah U. Custodio. Congratulations. Geneva Vergara. Miss Vergara. Congratulations. John Paul Aldeza. Online, okay. We'll send this. John Paul C. De Los Santos. Thank you. Justin Angelo Obantam. Thank you. Catherine Eve E. Ebue. Thank you. Lorenzo Bautista. Marvin C. De Los Santos. Thank you. Maxine Ridume. Thank you. May G. Camayo. Thank you. Maynard Anthony T. Acosta. Good job. Nikin Veronia. Miss Veronia is here? Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Could Apollo give this to Romelin C. Revilla? Thank you. Wilma P. Pope? Thank you. Have I already called Miss Maria Antoinette the Pasquin? Translations. Is there anybody who has not received the certificate yet? Okay, what is Miss Rita Angela and Vera?
We'll print it downstairs before you. We have the papers here. So sorry about this.
But wait, maybe we can ask Nana.
I'll just.
Also, if there is any spelling mistake, just let us know. We can just reprint the correct date.
Virtual participants, we will email you your certificate. So we don't leave you guys behind. You should get a certificate, same as the ones we have here, sent to your inbox. So I think we're done, so we did end a bit early because we have all our star students.
Before we close, on behalf of PSE and as well as on behalf of the participants, I'd like to appreciation to ESCAP. So we would like to thank you for organizing this training workshop, for sharing your knowledge and share something. We also have certificate. So this is the certificate of appreciation. So this certificate is for Elsa Pasalim in recognition of his invaluable effort in sharing his knowledge as a first person during the technical or training for legal analysis of the Philippines, given this 14th day of December 2022 at Novotel, Manila, Araneta City. So signed by AL as well, Magilla. He's sitting right now. Oh, sorry. Not wrong. So she is the Assistant National Statistician of Social Sector Statistics Surveys of the Philippines.
We need to.
And for the rest of the participants, for yung soft copy na lang po ng photo, can be soft copy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. This is so kind. Really, we really appreciate it. And we all, I think I can say on behalf of all three of us, we really enjoyed this training. It was stimulating for us. We hope it was stimulating for you as well. And we look forward to collaborating more. So please be in touch. All of our email addresses will be on the communications moving forward. We want to thank our team who is behind scenes on Zoom. Chloe and Nana, thank you so much for all your help. And I'm sorry you didn't get to see all the fun brain breaks, but the video is actually for them. And thank you to Dustin, who, thanks to him, we actually, from PSA, we were able to finalize dates and get this training going quite quickly. So we really appreciate all his help and support on that as well. Yes. Came through. And thank you to each and every one of you. It was really wonderful to work with you, and you were all very engaged. So thank you for that. If you guys don't mind, we can do a picture. We will fix these names. But if everyone wants to come and do a final picture holding the certificates, we can do that. Virtual participants, well, that never works. If you'd like to turn on your camera, that would be great. It just sometimes doesn't get captured, but we can try.
like yesterday.
Yeah, same orientation.
Hindi, ano,
Sila muna. Sila muna. Tabi ka muna dyan. Baka masama ka dyan.